Okay, looks like everything's set up. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Carla Gull today. For all of you who are maybe watching for the first time, I'm Tanya Milano Snell, certified Pure Joy parent coach. Also have a master's in education and am trained in place-based education, play-based education, nature-based, all of that fun stuff. And so I was super excited to hook up with Carla and chat about some things I really, really love and are dear to my heart. And talk a little bit about the importance of play today and how we can bring in specifically loose parts into our play, kind of this open-ended type of play. We met in the Wild Schooling group in Facebook, and it's just such a great place to be for inspiration. So if you are not in that group, make sure to jump into that one. That's Nicolette Souter's group, and Carla's going to tell us about her stuff too. So here's Carla. She is an online professor, like lots of hats.
Lots of hats all the time.
local programming, online programming, consulting. You co-authored a book, right? And there's even more. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself?
Sure. And first of all, I got to go get a hug from Nicolette this weekend. So I saw her at a conference, and that was so to see her again in person. So she's just a few hours north of me, and always grateful to see people in person when we can. And as far as me, what I do a bunch of different things. As you mentioned, I do some writing and academic research in regard to tree climbing, risky play, and then this concept of loose parts in outdoor classrooms with preschoolers and creativity and how that impacts that. But then also I am in preschools with children, and I host nature play days. I'm also the state coordinator for Indiana Children Nature Network. I don't know how I get all of these things that I do. Many of them are volunteers. Some of them I get paid for, etc. But so I've been hosting nature play days this last week, which has been lots and lots of fun, and also host like kindergarten classes as well. And then do professional development for educators, and enjoy all of it. You mentioned this concept of loose parts. I would say that that's key and integral to all of it. I started a loose parts play Facebook group. I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and we had more people show up to a conference presentation than we had expected, and we're like, oh, you know what? We'll just start an online group. There's like 110,000 people from around the world in it now, which is super exciting and very inspirational to see all the different ways that we can experiment and explore and tinker with loose parts in the many applications to that. So, and as you mentioned, I've got lots of hats, and one of the important ones is being a mom.
Yeah. So we're in live in my Facebook group for moms, and specifically, bringing in the importance of play for moms as well, which we'll get into later. We set up a lot of things for our kids, and the importance of play, we need to reconnect that back to ourselves as well, and how loose parts can really be beneficial, I believe, because I do it all the time, in keeping with my own self-care and my overwhelm as well. Keeping up with that, because we'll get into like, how do we set it up? How do we clean it up? Like all that stuff that it's like it's too much, right? We just like, let's not do it kind of thing. Because I've led these kind of programs before as well, like you do, setting it up for, training, setting it up for kids, cleaning it up, and so much fun. And that's the point of it. So, I wanted to open up with basically giving a definition of loose parts, because there are people that probably have never even heard of that are going to listen.
Yeah. It's so funny to hear what people call it, like that moving parts thing you do. I'm like loose parts, loose parts. But even loose parts don't necessarily have to be loose. And you mentioned kind of that definition. And that was really one of our guiding questions when we did some academic research on the topic. I found that people come into the group all the time, like, oh, if you paint that, then it's not a loose part. I'm like, what? You know, like we only do natural, loose parts have to be natural. There's all kinds of different myths out there about it. But if you kind of think about the basic principles, things like a stick, a cardboard tube of some sort, some type of recycled item that you may have, all of these are loose parts, but it can extend beyond that to natural phenomena like the wind or gravity or magnetism and water, just how we experiment and explore and connect with the world around us. And just being open to that mindset that sees beyond this just being a stick and being so many other possibilities beyond that. It really encourages that divergent thinking that we need, and those 4 C's that we talk about: the creativity, the problem solve, no, that's not critical thinking, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. When children are engaged with loose parts, it really helps with those 21st century skills that we need.
Yes. As a former, I didn't say in my bio, like I'm a preschool teacher for many, many years. So it's just critical to all of those things. And the 21st century skills, like you mentioned. I have a question about, you mentioned lots of different things, and especially like natural. It doesn't have to be natural materials. They can be man-made materials as well, correct?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So like this morning, I had a bin out for my son, and he actually found an egg carton, and he decided he was going to build something with it. But it was all art materials like pom-poms and sequins. And, he decided to build, it's like he saw a face in the carton. It was just amazing to watch. I get so inspired by the kids and see what they come up with, what they see. And yeah.
And that's truly the power and magic behind it, is that, I may have an idea or a start of where I think it might go, but when I pull myself back from it and just allow them to explore and experiment with their interests and their ideas, it is always much more beyond what I could ever imagine. And I learn from them, and the engagement and motivation of the children participating in this is very high as well. And it's just a different, I don't know if you'd call it retention factor, but also that engagement and motivation as well, because the children are the ones that are driving that. And it's like they are the researchers and the experimenters that are doing the work and making new discoveries, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, the engagement is a huge part of, as a teacher, and you want the kids to stay engaged. And as a mom too, like, you have things to do, right? And I get this a lot with my clients. So they'll only play for 10 minutes and they won't leave me alone all day. And this, when it's open-ended and they're engaged, I actually left him this morning and walked the dog for 20 minutes, and he was still doing that. I was like, wow, he didn't come in and bother my husband. Like, I thought when I got back, he'd be like up, jumping on the bed or watching TV, and he was still doing that project. So I even surprised myself still when I set things up. And I was going to ask you next, because you mentioned they're kind of self-driven a little bit when they're working with this, and the retention part of it. As I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking back to my own childhood of what I remembered of loose parts. And a lot of my memories have to do with that, not specific toys. Like, yeah, I had Cabbage Patch and all this other stuff, but I remember.
Same generation.
Yeah. But I do remember, like, my grandma had a thing of buttons. I loved
Perfect
it.
example.
That's the one thing I wanted from her house.
Yep. I have my grandma's.
Yeah. And I would spend, I don't know, I just remember that's what I remember about her house was playing with those buttons and sorting them. And
Mhm.
I don't know what I did with them. And the other thing was outside. We had a fort my dad had built with random pieces of wood and making my own broom out of
Oh, cool.
pine needles and
Mhm.
sticks and things like that. So those were the memories that really popped up when I was thinking of things that didn't involve like man-made toys.
Yeah. And those are great examples of just loose parts in action in general. When I talk to older people about this concept, they're like, that's just how we used to play. And we've kind of
Mhm.
shifted to a different type of play, sometimes with more electronics. Though I think that there are some open-ended electronic games that could be classified as loose parts, like the educator mode in Minecraft. You know, I have kids, they're
Yeah.
building stuff. And I mean, what they do with that is super, super cool in the resources. But we do take that even off of the computer screen and do like Minecraft in real life too, with
Mhm.
loose parts that we find and such as well. But yeah, so it's all there out there if we're willing to explore and allow our children to explore a little bit with it. I remember making potions in old containers with flowers that we were making perfume, you know,
Mhm.
or gathering up different resources we lived in Florida for a bit and letting them dry and then creating a store to sell things out of as well. That it was just stuff that we gathered in the neighborhood. But
Mhm. Yeah,
dried
potion.
orange peels and berries and those kinds of things.
Yeah, the potions, those are really popular.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any, so I know you set this up for lots of groups and you do trainings and you've educated kids this way. Um, can you talk a little bit about like tips and tricks on coming up with ideas and like setting it up and that whole like kind of the logistics of it?
Yeah, and I'm going to share, just point to some other resources. I do have a podcast called Loose Parts Nature Play that has got specific episodes on all kinds of things like
Mm,
this. And one of them is loose parts at home. I think engaging in loose parts in our own settings at home is a little different than doing it like professionally as an educator. And so that may be a resource. We don't want them evidence of play, which some people call mess, out all the time, you know, and where do we hide these things and such? So I just do want to share that. And then also have another one that's like 30 plus approaches to loose parts, which may be very helpful. There is really no right or wrong way. One simple way that I set up just some outdoor play with this, I just have found like 2 crates on Facebook Marketplace, put a board over the top, get one of those jugs that I probably found at a garage sale somewhere with the buttons for water, and just some old containers that we're no longer using. My parents decluttered and they're getting rid of a bunch of an old frying pan, you know, a soup pot.
mhm,
I looked for those special cream pouring things at garage sales for like 50 cents. I really like stainless steel things. And then we have just like a water mud kind of kitchen setup that's quick and easy. It's not huge, big, elaborate, but the children just engage and are into that for a long period of time. I also have some things like stem bins as well, where I might get like craft sticks, you know, the different
mhm,
colors, some clothespins, some small wooden cubes from the dollar store, which is now $1.25, and then like binder clips, and just have those together as a grab and go container. And it can be used in lots of different ways. It could be used to build something. It could be used to illustrate a concept, to tell a story, etc. But just having a few different things. I also kind of collect these big jars from like animal crackers or whatever,
mm,
or pretzels or whatever they may be, clean them out. And I just put all those little scraps, you know, that you're not quite sure what to do with. Most moms throw them away. My husband tries to throw them away, and I'm like, no. I
yeah.
always go through the bin before he throws things away. But just putting those random things inside of it, like I've got some golf tees and marbles and just things from vending machines or whatever they may be, and some fabrics and some yarns. And then they can pull out that junk jar whenever they need some materials or resources or just something to explore and have something to do. So those are a few kind of starts. And I do have a whole podcast episode on loose parts starts, places to start. And I always like to say that it's not an ending point. Process is more important than product, and how they interact is always going to be more important than anything that I imagine. So just some ideas with that.
Yeah, I love those tips. And, I moved houses in August and I had to part ways with some of my collection because it was, those things that I collected over 5 years of teaching preschool in that house. And yeah, same thing. My husband never could quite understand like all of the things I had collected. Like, what is this bag of stuff? Like I just, when you start to look through this lens of play, everything becomes something you can use. And it's
lots
really
of possibilities.
fun. Yeah, really a fun way to play with your children.
And saying that, I mean, it can get overwhelming at times. And so like having designated areas to use things is one tip. Sometimes, like you may have seen those Lego mats, that you can put out and then everything comes back up together. Put a sheet out and that's where they're playing. And then it's quick and easy cleanup. And then also just like these smaller kits, so it's not everywhere. And also just think about the versatility of things. Like you can just go grab a few different things from your kitchen and let children play with it. Some stainless steel bowls, some whisks, some water, and some like dish soap or something like that, and some straws to blow bubbles and those kinds of things. But then they get washed and put back into your things that you use all the time. So we have a lot of dual purpose things that are play, but also just normal functioning things that we use in our household as well.
Yeah, that's some great advice, because I do struggle with executive functioning sometimes. And it's like, whoa, we've got this going over here and this going over here. And, when you're in a preschool classroom, there are areas, right? Like where things go. And at home, you have to really be mindful about setting up spaces for, like you said, spaces for this kind of play. Or, it's like, for this 30 minutes, we've got this mat down, and when we're done, we're gonna, get it all sorted out and cleaned up.
I find as my children get older too, they forget about the resources that we have in the house. And so there's this term called strewing. And so sometimes I'll just like the stem bin, I might get the stem bin out, or the magnet bin. Like I have a bin of just all kinds of things that can interact with magnetism. Some of them are toy sets, but then I've added lots of other things with it as well. But they forget about it because it's on a shelf someplace. But if I go and put it out and just play with it just a little bit, to look like there's an invitation to, hey, someone's been playing, I can play too. I find that there's more engagement factor with my children sometimes with that, because it's out of sight, out of mind. But if I put it there and there's a little teaser for play, they will also play with that.
Yeah, wonderful example of using rotating toys, right? Like you put the bins away for a while, and then when it comes back out, it's like a novelty item, and so new ideas. And it was growing up, we did not have organizational skills in my family, so this was something I actually had to learn from other teachers, because I didn't have any of that. So those clear bins with the lid, like little, you can have different sizes. Oh, perfect, because you can see what's in it, and you can label them if you want, and just like pull those bins out. And like you said, that invitation, like, I'm just going to start tinkering. And then other kids want to tinker and see where it goes.
Yeah, we even have some smaller kits that I'll bring out to a restaurant with us, so I did one when Frozen was really popular, around a Frozen theme. It was mirrors that didn't break, and some little characters, and the ends, things that you put on like Christmas tree lights. but it looked like icicles, so just finding and repurposing things through thrift stores or things people are getting rid of, but putting them together in unique combinations that may be appealing to children and involving children in those decisions as part of that as well.
You're giving me so many ideas. It's like summer break, so I'm like, oh, I'm ready to build some new kits. So thank you. So because a lot of people in my world, my clients are a bit, struggling with burnout or overwhelm, and coming up with new ideas like this can be quite difficult. I'm so grateful for you sharing like these different tidbits and ideas. But how has the family been involved with this, and how, and your passionate interest kept you going with it, right? Like, because you have like a million different, not a million, but lots of roles and hats
Yes.
and jobs. How do you keep up with not getting overwhelmed, remembering to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
How has your family helped with that? Can you talk
I
a
would
little
say,
bit?
that burnout is real. I also recognize and embrace like how I am wired. I am a more higher energy person than some people are. And so other people like just think about what all I'm doing, they just get tired. And to
Yeah.
me, I've had to kind of shift out of that. Like, it's weird for me to be so interested in so many different things to embrace, that's what it is. And I dovetail a whole lot of things. And so if I might use an idea in a preschool, then also use it with my children at home when they have friends over, and then write an article about it and do a podcast episode about it. So I dovetail a lot of the things that I do, and I may use it for some training in the future. And then I also make sure that I'm taking time for me as part of that as well. And so, I intentionally had a hike scheduled this weekend, even though I've had a busy week being involved with being a mom and my own work, plus additional professional development kinds of things. I took time to go on a hike with a friend, and that's important. I work from home mainly unless I'm going places. And so I know that I need, so understanding how I function, I need to see people and I need to get out of my house. So scheduling in a lunch date or something like that, or meeting up at the park with another mom with her kids is important to make sure that I'm getting some social interaction that I need. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it dovetails with something else. But,
Yes. So
and
this like,
oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking, yeah. So you said a few things that were really, really important, like knowing yourself, your wiring, like that this is what works for you. I'm the same way. Lots of ideas, lots of projects. It keeps me motivated, it keeps me going. And then turning something into like evergreen that can be used year after year, or turning it into a blog post or this, that, and the other. Hugely important, because the passion keeps us motivated. That's a self-care item right there. And then you also mentioned that you know that you need social time built into your schedule, and that you put, hiking or something on your schedule and commit to it to keep, up with your own self-care.
And also recognizing it's okay to say no at times too. Like, I had a travel fiasco last week where I literally got like an hour and a half of sleep after delays in trains, planes, automobiles, etc., buses, local buses to get back home. And I went ahead and canceled or rescheduled a couple of things because I was exhausted and I needed sleep. I pushed out some of my grading and things. And I also know that when I am gone like that, I need to touch base with my kids, and each of them have different needs of what they need as far as communication. One of them, I have to go into his room, 17-year-old, doesn't want me in his room, but I need to go in and have a 5-minute chat every day with him. Another one, I need he's not going to be as forthright telling me what's going on as a 13-year-old. But I need to just go and start asking some questions and being willing to be interested in the podcast that he is listening to and the music that he is listening to. And he may not tell me everything about what he's writing or whatever, but taking that dedicated time to make sure I'm focused on that one child of mine is important. And going to ice cream at our local ice cream place is always a win for that. And I have kind of released, I think sometimes we have that concept that like mom's supposed to arrange everything. Mom's supposed to make sure dinner is cooked. Mom is supposed to keep everything clean in the house. And I will say, well, I'm probably one of the biggest mess makers at my house, but in our house, I've kind of let go of that mentality. The children, from a young age, they have been involved in chores. I only have boys. If I only had the girls do things, I'd be doing everything by myself. That's not fair. So they all take turns doing some cooking and doing the dishes and some of those things. And so it's not just my responsibility. My husband has taken on certain things, like he's in charge of the laundry pretty much. That doesn't mean it gets put away very well, but it's one thing that I am not worried about. And I can ask him, hey, I need some clothes washed, and he will make sure that it gets done and such. I might have just had to ask him, hey, could you bring those clothes upstairs? Because I need to change,
Yeah, it's like,
and that's okay. Advocating for our needs, right? And we also help each other. We step in. If I know that some laundry needs done, I go ahead and do that. If I'm exhausted and I've fallen asleep in the afternoon, my husband will make macaroni and cheese. Even if that's not the best meal, it's a meal and it's done. And we support each in our interests and passions and hobbies. Touching base and keeping those communication lines open, I think, is important, and helping each other in the things. And I try to make sure that he's got time to do the interests that he wants to do as well.
Yeah, so many great nuggets there. Like the starting off by knowing when to say no. And sometimes we say yes first, and then we need to change our mind based on X, Y, and Z, or energy levels, or whatever, 4 kids, you said 4 boys, right? Like,
yeah,
stuff comes up. So being able to change a yes to a no, so important. And then the boundaries, you talked a little bit about, your boundaries and kind of your expectations and how they've shifted, or letting go of, that my house isn't going to be like spotless, because that's not valuable to me. Like I have more different interests than that. And that's something that I've had to work in our marriage too, about, dividing the responsibilities. And it's a huge process when you're first getting into a marriage and figuring that out. And then with each child you bring in, it's figuring out, like, you can't do everything. Mom cannot do everything.
Nope. And even, I mean, not that our houses should be pigsties at all, but just embracing this loose parts concept. There are more possibilities in our house than there may be in some other houses. I have kids come over all the time, like, we would never be able to do this at our house, and I mean, we have a wind tube in our living room, that just doesn't happen most places, but we've embraced a little bit more that our house is going to be not as neat and organized and magazine picture perfect. And I would rather our kids have their friends over in doing neat, engaging things with a little bit messy house than not have them, than wait until it's perfect. So and like the 13-year-old, he had a couple of friends over yesterday. They were outside for 5 hours, looking for frogs and catching tadpoles and fish and all that kind of stuff. And if I had waited until the house was perfect, that never would have happened. And it's okay to embrace the messiness of it a bit, and realize it doesn't have to be perfect to be good and fulfilling. So
there's a slogan right there. Embrace the mess. I was on a call yesterday, and my son brought in a toad And I was like, there's a toad here. I was like right here on another call with somebody, Zoom call with somebody. It's just so fun when and feels more magical that way.
Mhm.
When you can just kind of let go of some of those magazine expectations, right? We have these giant boxes we put in the basement from a fridge we bought.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Great loose
yeah,
part.
yeah, just huge box down there and lots of drawing and cutting and making it into things. 2 boxes, something came from somewhere else too. But yeah, like I can't bring myself to clean that stuff up because they're still using it. So, finding a place like that in the basement where it can just be for a while, like that's
Yeah.
just gonna be there. But I
One of
do.
my children kind of went through a cardboard box phase, and our foyer as you come in is kind of open. So there's lots of space for him to build there. And I could handle it for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. After that, I was kind of like, how about behind the couch? So moving it, like thinking about how long we really could have it in that space and saying, yes, I like to have a yes mentality as much as we can, but then also compromising. Could it be over here? He ended up at one point, like covering his whole room in cardboard, like everything single space, and then did like a walkway over to the bathroom and did a 24-hour cardboard challenge where he spent his whole time in the cardboard room. And so I'm like, hey, my kid's actively engaged for 24 hours. I think I brought him some food, but he also had some snacks and stuff. And then he could go take care of his bathroom needs as well because he made his bridge. But saying yes to those opportunities is a little messier. Yeah. But we also can have conversations and limits around some things too. Some boundaries, like you mentioned around it too.
The fort building's a big one because they want to take all of the furniture in the living room and the chairs from the dining room and it's so awesome. And then we have to eat dinner. And it's like, where am I going to eat dinner? Right. So
picnic table, maybe.
Yeah, we did that today. Actually, we ate outside. But yeah, the boundary thing, just the communication, like you said, communicating is so important. And then there's a better understanding of like what's expected here. I can leave this for this long and then I have to do this, that sort of thing. And that's all they really, kids need the same respect as the adult, like that was really important to them. They built that.
Yeah.
And where, like you said, where can we put this for a while? How about behind the couch? Like what's their idea on where to keep it? We did that a lot at preschool with Lego builds. Like, I want my build tomorrow. Okay, so we'll have, let's come up with a place to keep things overnight. And then those kind of Socratic conversations where it's like, well, how long do you think we should keep these Lego builds? Right? As a group to, though all the Legos are disappearing. So now what do we do? We can't keep these for 3 weeks. I don't know. So I just think that those conversations are really, really important. Like going back to collaboration, creativity. What were the other ones?
Critical thinking and communication.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, totally. So back full circle.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wrap up here by, you need to tell us all the places to find you. You mentioned your podcast and some other things to wrap up. But also, there's a piece I wanted to ask you that we mentioned in conversation before we go, that education is actually part of your self-care. And I want to know about that before we go.
I grew up with a mother who, if I didn't know how to do something, she said, look it up, so I was part of the look it up club all the time and have become, we say the term lifelong learner, but learning things is really important to me. I started doing the stay at home mom as I was kind of taught by religion or society, but that's not how I was wired, and I shortly started a doctorate degree That was still a flexible hybrid program. I could still take care of my kids, and had some help to help with some childcare and such with that. But I went back and got my doctorate then, and started doing research and things of that sort. But even now, like about 10 years ago, I was just looking, had my last kid. So my youngest is 9 right now. But I was just looking for something for myself, and I like to learn new things. And so I did our local master naturalist class, Indiana master naturalist class. And for me, that opened up a whole new world with that nature and children and play. And I did a deep dive. And so I go to professional development conferences and things, and I go on webinars. While I produce those, I also consume those, because education and learning more and understanding and researching just with my children is important to me as well. And that really feeds my soul. And I know that that's part of who I am as an individual. It may not be as much as big of a path in other people's journeys, but for me, education and learning and growing in those ways is an important part of it.
That's so beautiful. I can resonate with that, because I, when you write a resume and everything, or cover letters, it's like lifelong learner was like something I wanted to put in everything that I wrote. And researching and reading and knowing deep about certain topics. I really resonate with that. And it is self-care to me.
Yeah.
Because it's really important to me to be able to have that time.
And I would say, like, we kind of mentioned it just briefly, but our book, Loose Parts Learning in K-3 Classrooms, that was kind of like the product of a lot of that searching and understanding. My background is as an elementary school teacher. I wanted to take this concept of loose parts to the K-3 classroom. My youngest, when he was in kindergarten, he was doing like spelling tests, and a child from his preschool, a good friend of his, was in a lab school for kindergarten. She was having Forest Fridays where she was climbing trees and building with sticks and things. I was like, there are better ways to educate. And it's been neat to see that full circle, and being able to do some of those more open-ended activities in his school, and sharing the book that we had with his educators and things of the sort too. And going to our library to share some of those concepts on Monday, and through our nature play sessions and such. There are additional ways to educate, and my own education helped me find additional ways to educate others, and we put that together in the book. So
yes. So the link for Carla's book is in the description of the video. There's an Amazon link that I made, so you can buy it there. This concept of learning and having time, I know a lot of my moms that I talk to, they're like, I just don't have time to read the books I want to read. I don't have time to write the things I want to write. This is why I left the classroom, to pursue the things that light me up, and to keep connected with myself, and have those passion projects, and how to make a career out of it. So I really appreciate you talking about that importance of, being able to know yourself first, and then finding the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And being able to do those.
And I will say, along with that, having a community to support that was key for that. I put in book proposal before, but I later did it with some research colleagues that I work with regularly. That adds that social aspect of it that I like, I know I need, and then also some accountability. If I'm just doing it for me, I won't schedule the time. But if I'm scheduling the time with other people, we make progress, and we work better together sometimes than just doing it on our own. So for me, that was an important aspect of it.
I love that, because I have my mom community online, in the Home Revolution. So anyone that's listening, if you need a community of moms that are moving together, trying to be passionate in our worlds, and mom at the same time, there's a lot of self-care items in that online community to keep us from burnout. So working moms. So that link will also be in the description of this video if you want to look into joining my community. And then Carla can tell us where to find all the loose part stuff, where to find you on social media before we wrap up.
So many options. And as you mentioned, lots of hats, so lots of places.
Yeah.
I would say one of the biggest places, the Loose Parts Play group. And that's, parents, educators, therapists, all kinds of people, librarians are at it from around the world. Loose Parts Play on Facebook. And then with the book, we also have a Loose Parts Learning in K-3 classrooms. So if you're looking more for of a educational side of the Loose Parts, that would be another place to connect. And then the podcast Loose Parts Nature Play is what that is called. Lots of episodes about all kinds of things. And then I also run kindergarten classes. Some of them are online, like this. And then I also have some locally as well, Thursdays at 10 a.m. So it would be a child or children and caregiver is in that online one. And I have loved their program for their open-ended thing. And even though I obviously have like tons of ideas, I still learn from kindergarten all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to do it. I think they just have some great experiences for our children and their families. So.
Yay. Thank you so much. I know I learned so many new ideas when I talk to other educators. So thank you so much, Carla, for being here. And we will see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye for now.
Bye.